Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. In honor of Mother's Day happening this Sunday, Joellen is here. Joellen is my mom.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with Amelia. Get all set up for this.
Yes,
So,
very good.
very exciting to be here. It takes a village to do this horse thing. That's for sure.
Yes, it does. So we thought in honor of Mother's Day that we would share a little bit about our journey, share a little bit about our mothers, what we have learned from our mothers. We would also love to hear if you have any takeaways from your mother. And if you don't know, my mother rides. Now she does. And she helps me a lot with my crazy online business, which is fantastic.
But wait a minute, we're not on Facebook yet.
We're not on Facebook yet. We have to wait.
No, well, no, it's just not coming up. How do we do that?
I don't know. Not connected right to Facebook. Sometimes it takes a while,
Oh,
or
it
sometimes
does.
it might not be connected. This whole like technology thing is just. Um, oh, I see us on Facebook. What do you mean you don't see us?
Okay, I don't see us. Okay, I'll share us as soon as I see us. You keep talking.
Here, I'll share us. I will share us. So
Okay.
you talk and I'll share.
Okay. Well, it's great to be here with Amelia, and we talked a little bit about it. It was a crazy journey when Amelia was young. She was 10 when she started riding, and she was into it. It was like the entire life revolved around riding. And she used to stand in the kitchen and she was like, I'm ready to go. What's wrong? Where's everybody else? Why can't we get in the car and go now? So she was very determined to ride her horse. And it's been amazing to watch the consistency. And she did actually two things. She got me into riding and she got her brother Joseph into riding. So neither of us would ride if we didn't have Amelia's strong, persistent love of riding in our life.
Yes, but I know that you really supported me in riding and in getting horses and in taking me to lessons and driving me like 45 minutes back and forth to the barn. And I am very grateful to for you. Or yeah, I'm grateful to you for that support. So
Well, one of the things I liked about it was that it required hard work. It was serious and clear, and I remember when we first went to Larry's, we didn't have anything to do because our horse was too dangerous for us to handle. And we got busy cleaning pens. We cleaned a lot of manure out of Larry's pens. And Larry was like, what are you guys doing? You're the clients. And I was like, you shovel manure, we shovel manure. We have to work hard if we're going to do this life. And so I love that it required hard work from all of you.
yeah. Well, that's definitely a lesson that I learned from you. So let us know in the chat, like, what is a lesson that you learned from your mother? We would love if you would share because, your mother does have a big impact on your life for good and for bad.
Yeah.
But I definitely, like, I'm grateful that you really taught me that the importance of consistency and the importance of hard work. And I remember you telling me with Achilles, you were like, if you don't, this is how I remember it. Like, if you don't make the commitment, if you're not riding every single day, you won't have a horse. And I really took that to heart that having horses, it's a privilege and it also is a commitment to that consistency and to taking care of them in good times and in bad. So I do appreciate that. What did you learn from your mother?
I think that is true, that consistency, that you just do one thing every day, one step at a time. She'd always say, one step at a time, just take it slowly, but be consistent. And her family were farmers from Nebraska. And they very much had to work hard and plow the fields and garden and do all of those things and cook for the thrashers. And it was very much, even though my parents lived in the city and I lived in the city, I wanted to get back to a more rural lifestyle with livestock. And that's what we did. And I really like that. I was with the horses today.
Yes, now you have a 100-acre ranch out there in Colorado.
Yes, that's 160 acres. And I let the horses loose. Amelia sometimes says I do dangerous things, like it was really rainy over the last 2 days, and today was the first sunny day. So I rode Zephania with Harvey loose. And it's it's amazing. I mean, he'll run off and then he'll come back and then he'll like touch her and then he'll like move off, but it makes it very lively. And he gets exercise and so does Zephania. So it's very, very fun being out here.
Yeah. Well, I definitely sometimes have envy that you get to live there and with your horses. So maybe one day I'll get to have a farm and a ranch. But I do also really appreciate that you always supported me to do what I love and to follow my dreams. And that, it's hard. Like it takes a lot of bravery to kind of go for that and to do that. But it is like riding and the horses is such a passion of mine. And I feel so fortunate that I can do that for my work and that I also get to share that passion with you. And that's one thing is I know when we were kids, like you sacrificed a lot to take care of Joseph and I. Like we were like your entire life. And I was so happy that when I went to college and I left Scotty for you, that you started riding and then, you got into it. And it wasn't always easy, like learning to ride as an older amateur rider. But it's so fun that now we kind of share that passion. So, what was it like for you, like starting riding older?
I think I had the opportunity and the luxury to watch a lot. So I watched you for about 5 or 6 years before I started writing. And then I had a groundwork. So I always knew I could get off and do groundwork. And I remember very clearly writing Scotty, and he would turn and I would fall off and he would run to the barn. And I was like, finally, you said to me, Mom, you can't kick him to go away from the barn because that's hard. You've got to reward him when he's walking away from the barn. And I was like, so this, like, when do you release and when do you reward? It's really hard to figure out. But Scotty was I've been very lucky to ride several of your horses that have been well trained. And that helps a lot. That's a jump start to be your mom is to have good horses. That's for sure.
Yeah, but you also have like kind of a grit and determination about you, which I appreciate because like you're trying to get your body to cooperate and you're breathing hard. You're like, I can do this. I'm talking to myself. I'm talking to myself. And that's another thing that I got from you for sure is like confidence in yourself and just kind of that grit and determination to keep going. And we should talk about Geronimo because this weekend is our flying changes webinar. Is Geronimo the first horse that you got to do flying changes on?
Absolutely, Geronimo. But we have to go back to cantering Geronimo, and then we'll talk about flying changes. I had a very hard time learning the canter rhythm, and Amelia's idea of how to teach her mom was to take Geronimo, put him on the lunge line. I didn't have any reins. I didn't get stirrups, and I had to canter 20-meter circles. And so I got lunge lessons quite a bit from Amelia and Geronimo. And then Geronimo came and went, and then he was with Amelia, and then he did the I2, and then he got a suspenser, and he came back to me. And he was so well trained. He had attitude. You had to tell him, yes, we're going to do this. But then you just like canter on one lead, and then you switch your legs, and he would just change. It was like this really lifted up feeling of suspension. And I could do TikToks and I could do fours on him across the diagonal. And not because I could do them, but because you trained him really well. And then he came to me as a schoolmaster. I highly recommend writing schoolmasters.
Yes,
So,
that was
mhm.
that was definitely fun to see you riding Grotto and doing tempi changes, and very fun, very cool.
I
Yeah.
used to I showed him third level, and a couple times afterwards I finally looked at my test and I was so excited to do the canter work and the two changes in third level that I just stopped writing. So I would get like sixes or sevens on my flying changes, and then I would get five on that last diagonal at the trot because I was like so excited that I had done the test and the canter work was good, and then I just stopped writing. So it's an adventure riding a horse, that's for sure.
Well, in honor of Mother's Day, we're doing a Flying Changes webinar on Sunday. So if you haven't RSVP'd yet, please RSVP, because I'm going to break down a little bit more about like the steps that I take to teach a horse how to do the flying changes. And then, so here's a funny story for all of you. When I started doing this like online training stuff, and I, YouTube videos, and you like support me in pretty much everything that I've ever done. And I told my mom, I was like, okay, so I think I'm gonna like make these courses and then get people to take online riding courses through the internet. And I just remember you like very kindly being like, I don't really think that's gonna work. I was like, no, really, like it's going to work. It's going to be fine. I'm going to do it. And then, it was maybe like 6 months later, and you're like, wow, like that's actually working.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit earlier, but it's really amazing that the online learning, it does work. And it's like a different way of learning, and a way of learning that is sometimes better for people. Do you want to talk about your surprise that this is actually working?
Well, I think I mean, this is unheard of that you could teach somebody to do something that is so physical and so in the moment and so hard over the internet. And I really, one of the things you did, Amelia, is you were consistent. You just started putting out a video every week. You were like, and you just kept doing it. That consistency is also how you train horses. But I really have come to believe that watching your video at home in the comfort of your home, when you're not multitasking, you're not worried about falling off, you're not trying to turn, your brain can actually figure out what Amelia is trying to teach you and what's happening. Then you can go practice it, and then you can come back to your home and you can watch again. So it's been amazing to me to help people with you and to see how much I've learned from you over the internet.
Yeah. And our cancer challenge every day, my mom and I talk on the phone, and we're like, we're actually helping people with their cancer. And we've really enjoyed seeing everyone's posts in the Facebook group. And that's just like a lot of fun. And it's so special to be able to help people from all over the world. Like we have some people from the Middle East and from Japan. And like, it's really wild. So it's very fun.
That is really true. It's amazing. And I think, we should say we were a little nervous offering the Canter Challenge because it's a hard transition and people get scared. But I think I'm a naive person because I believe that you should canter because you never know when your horse might just start cantering and then you're like, I don't know what to do. So I think it's a really important skill to have every time when you're on a horse. And then, like my horse, it is more fun to canter. And I feel safer cantering her now that I've gotten over the hump and I really understand her and what her needs are. But she's hot, and the canter is easier than the trot. So I hope that happens to other people in the challenge. And then I hope to teach flying changes to her because that would be super fun.
That would be really fun. That would be very okay. So we have a few more questions. What for Joellen here? What would you say to other mothers that have maybe kids or grandkids that are wanting to learn to ride or start riding?
I would say let them have fun. I mean, I know it's really hard in our society to go, oh my gosh, they're going to get hurt. But it's really important that they play, that they have fun. Amelia and Joseph learned how to rope cows. Amelia has ridden down the fence at the Colorado State Fair with camels in the background. So just let your kids or your grandkids really have fun. The second piece of advice is don't ever scare a kid. Take it in really small steps. Don't ever let them get scared, because once someone gets scared, they almost never come back to riding a horse. And so it's really important to be careful in the beginning that they don't get scared. What would you say, Amelia?
That's what you did to us with sailing. You took us out sailing, broke the mast. It was freezing cold, almost capsized the boat, and we were like, "Yeah, no, not gonna sail."
Yeah.
Well, horses.
Yeah, I love sailing, and I did scare my kids when they were too little, and it was bad. So they never really, you both of you sailed, but never like I did.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that horses are such a wonderful thing for any kid. Like, it's such a wonderful connection and partnership and confidence building. And at least for me, I struggled to fit in school. Like, I didn't really have a lot of friends. I didn't really feel like I connected with the other kids at school. And so the horses for me, that was like the first place that I felt like I really belonged. And I had friends at the barn. Those were like the first real friends that I had. And then, of course, the horses were, like that's where you would go when you were upset, when you had a hard day, you would go to the barn and you would spend that time with your horse. And I think for kids, it's important that they understand that they take care of the horses. That they get their own horses ready, that they groom the horses. Like our first riding instructor was very particular about that. Because a lot of times now it's like the kids show up and the horse is ready at the mounting block. And so they miss that whole connection, which is so important with the horses. And then I think teaching kids the importance of like the responsibility and the commitment of it. And it's a hard thing because it's like, how do you support them to ride, but then also teach them that it's a privilege and it's a gift, and you have to really take that seriously and prioritize your horse's care and the consistency of the riding. So I don't know how you did it. How did you manage when I was like on a horse that was like trying to dump me or buck me off? Maybe you're just too naive.
I turned around. There are many times when I'm watching you and it gets too spicy or too difficult, and I just turn around. I'm like, I can't see what's going on. I remember one time you were at Larry's and you were starting a colt, and you were riding a colt out in the back where there were a lot of loose horses, and the colt bucked you off and kicked you on the way down. And you got back on the horse and rode it. But Larry called me on the phone and said, Joellen, you need to come get Amelia because she got bucked off pretty hard. I was thankful for every time you didn't get seriously hurt, but you had a little warning that this is really serious, because you have to get smarter when you ride horses. And as an older person riding, I do my groundwork. I did groundwork today before I got on. You have to be careful and really know what could happen and try to prevent it. But I figured you guys were going to take risk, and I'd rather have you take risk learning how to ride a horse than learning something productive. So I just went with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you said. You're like, well, it's cheaper than drugs and rehab, so we're just gonna go for it. And yeah, it is. I think it's like such a grounding thing to have in your life, like to have the horses and to have that commitment and to think about it and to
Yeah.
work on it. And it, and it is a gift for sure. And I'm grateful that like there was always this little tug of war between you and dad. And dad was like, oh, you need to go to college and like be an intellectual. And I'm grateful for that perspective as well, because I did
Mhm.
learn a lot of skills going to college. But then it's also nice to like have a passion and a love and to be able to really like follow that passion and follow that love.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that.
Yeah. You always smiled. You always had the very biggest, best smile when you were on a horse. And I did advocate for riding because I could see that smile. And I knew in high school that you were going to be a rider because you had this incredible smile. You went to Mount Holyoke partially on a scholarship for one semester because you only had one horse and you didn't like it. You really couldn't handle it. So we drove Geronimo and Amelia to school in Massachusetts. I didn't leave the truck and trailer there. So I drove home to Colorado and then I had to drive back to get Amelia in Massachusetts in December because she'd had enough and wanted to come back to Colorado where she could ride more than one horse.
Yeah.
So you came home and rode horses and went to school.
That's another interesting story because with Geronimo, like, so we got Geronimo and he was 4 and I was what, like 14. He started rearing. The trainers were like, get rid of him. He's a
Yeah.
terrible horse. And
Yeah.
somehow you were like, no, we're not going to just get rid of him. We're going to figure out how to work with him and do something different. Like, how did you have the, like, I don't know, because that was like a pretty strong decision to go trainer to be like, no, we're not giving up on this horse.
Both your dad and I felt very strongly that that horse was okay in Europe and not okay 6 weeks later in the United States. And we felt that it wasn't Geronimo.
Yeah.
And we had a vet who talked to us who said, get that horse to a different place. And so that's when I went and looked for a cowboy, and we found Larry, who is a genius and phenomenal with horses. And it was scary in the sense, I mean, he really reared. I mean, that first ride that Larry took on Geronimo was frightening. But I was naive. And I just believed it would work out. But, and it was so interesting. The little tiny things that you did that made Geronimo okay. And I really felt like that was a part of the learning process. There's this one time where you were doing groundwork on Geronimo, and Geronimo kicked you in the chest, and I was like, oh my God. I remember running to Larry and going, Larry, you've got to come help. And he came and he stood and he watched you, but he made you do it. And he said to me, he said, she has to figure it out. She's too involved in this. Nobody can hand it to her. She's got to work it out. So I was very thankful that you didn't get hurt more frequently than you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Life's a risk. It's all a risk. So,
Yeah.
calculated risk. And you were always really good about, supporting us to have good help, good trainers, good
Yeah.
teachers. And that's one thing I always admire about you is you'd always like overpay everyone. And it was just like, I so appreciate that now as a trainer because it's like, being a teacher of riding and of horses, it's hard work. And it's so important that you feel appreciated by your pupils and your students because then you're willing to just go that extra mile and help them. And that's definitely one thing that I learned from you is like the importance of like recognizing other people and helping them to understand that they are appreciated. And like you said with Larry, we were never exempt from the dirt work. It was like, you weren't done until all the chores are done, and you better get in there and help. I never got like the exempt pass just because of whatever. And I think that's a really important life lesson that I take, even today in the way that I manage my business is like, I'm always helping, doing all the jobs. It's never like, oh, that's not my job. And that's something I learned even from Julie. What was her saying about that? I was like,
You don't get to ride until your horse is clean and groomed. I mean, you just didn't. You
yeah,
had to do it.
yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
life lessons. One other thing we should talk about while you're here, Mom, is you're like the community, like you really manage the Facebook group and you try to keep like everyone safe and happy. I think we called you the happiness director for a while.
Yes, you did.
Why is community so important, and how do you try and help like support and keep it a safe space for everyone?
I think that we are all too alone in this journey of life, and it really matters how kind we are to each other. And no one was born knowing how to ride a horse. So we all start, including you, started at the beginning. And so I just really believe that there's a way to say something constructive. You can be serious and say, no, you really need to change your bit or do this or walk towards your horse and be kind about it. And I think so when Amelia started the Facebook group, she started talking to me about it. And then the next day she called me up and it was live on Facebook. And I was like, okay, it's okay. We have to now set some rules. And I just thought that kindness and constructive criticism were super important. And it's amazing. We have I think there's 38,000 people in the group, and I guarantee we've kicked out maybe 8 over the last 5 years. So we just set the standard and we're really clear about it. We don't see everything. It really takes all of us. If you see something that makes you uncomfortable, report it, because there's a great group of people who look at everything twice. And I think it's permeated your groups that's how you do it. Period. And it's a good thing.
I can remember when we were kids and there would be fights in the cul-de-sac with the kids, and you'd make us all like come into the house and say our side of the story and apologize.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is an amazing community that we have, and it's wonderful to be able to have that support and to help one another. And I think that is really important, that we are encouraging one another, supporting one another, and that there's always that also within the community that you have a learner's mindset, that you're willing to ask for help, willing to see constructive criticism, because learning is hard, getting criticism is hard, and so long as it's done in a way that's like productive and positive, I always try like the sandwich technique, say something nice, say what can get better, say something nice, because that way it's much better received, and yet you're still improving and you're still getting better and you're still offering that support and that help to other people.
Yeah.
But that's like a life lesson, right? Like if you want your husband to do something different, you have to kind of think about, how you're going to present it in a way that they don't feel attacked, or they don't like get their hackles up, and that they can actually hear that feedback. And it goes back to communication, which is, how do you communicate with everyone in your life? How do you communicate with your horse in a way that is productive and meaningful? And horses are such teachers of ourselves. Your horse really is a reflection of you, and your horse teaches you a lot about yourself.
Yeah. This made me think about my mom. And my mom passed away about a year and a half ago. And I think the thing that I miss the most is kind of the unconditional kindness that if I was having a bad day, I could call my mom up and she would be totally 100% with me and supportive and help me problem solve. And I think that kindness between each other and in the group is just huge. You don't get anywhere without being kind to each other. And it's such an important attribute for all of us to like. And it's true for the horses too. Your horse, your dog, your cat will love you more if you're kind. And you can communicate better if you're kind. So I just, I believe it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we will leave on that good note of kindness. You can see my little puppy in the background need to go and get entertained as he's destroying something back there. I do appreciate you being here tonight, Mom. So happy
Sure.
Thursday. Thank you for
Yeah.
supporting me, and I'm grateful to have you as my mother. So thank you.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. Enjoy. And, you know, we're all mothers to our animals too. So have a special day on Sunday.